Let's talk about the designer trash bag. You know the style I'm talking about. When this first became a thing again, I didn't think it would stick, but apparently every designer house now has their own version of the trash bag, and therefore every mid-tier and dupe brand does as well. I've seen trash bags from Tory Burch, from Songmont, from Strathberry, Anine Bing, Coach, you name it. Everyone wants a piece of the trash bag action. But for me, this is a prime example of a bag style that right off the bat, it was a heck no. My gut said heck no. Now, my gut did make an exception for this little strawberry cutie, but other than that, it was a resounding no. Yet apparently, when you hear enough people say yes, you start to question your gut. And I haven't quite figured out if that's a good or a bad thing. I mean, at one point, any Hermes bag would have been a heck no, just based on the principle of price alone. And now, welcome back to a briefcase of luxury, where we love to chat about all things related to life, learning, and luxury. While I have no intentions of quitting my day job as a business professor, I would love to continue to grow this channel, so thank you for being here today. I feel like this whole designer trash bag trend started with the release of the Chanel 22 in 2022. And that was such a polarizing bag. And I remember poo-pooing all over this bag when it first came out. And then somewhere along the way, I wasn't all the way converted, but I went as far as to track a couple of them on the pre-loved market. And then along came the Loewe Flamenco, or at least the re-release of the Flamenco. And same thing, I poo-pooed all over that as well when it was first released or re-released. But overall, the Flamenco was a lot less polarizing compared to the Chanel 22. I think it's because the Chanel 22 softened us a bit to the re-emergence of this silhouette maybe. Plus, the Flamenco seems more like something Loewe would re-release versus the Chanel 22, which kind of went against their whole classic and elegant aesthetic. Now, even for me, I was more receptive of the Flamenco, not just based on price, but the bag was just a lot more organic looking relative to the Chanel 22 with all the chains and the quilts and the logo. There was a lot going on with that bag. So again, somewhere along the way, I started paying more attention to the Flamenco and going into stores to try them on. Now, by the way, I wish they didn't get rid of the debossing of the anagram logo. To me, the foiling of the brand name in the middle just cheapens it a bit. What do you think? Now, the next one that came along for me was the Bottega dust bag. Now, of the three, this was the least expensive. And by this point, I think I was more or less converted, and I intentionally went to Bottega to look for this bag to try on. Now, they have raised the price slightly, and it's now right at the 2K mark, but it was under 2K when it was first released. I also just saw that they now have a mini size that can be cross-bodied, which I believe is between 13 to 15K last I checked, and I'm waiting to see what other colors they release this in. But I think out of the two, I would still prefer the regular size, just because if the leather is the same, then it's going to be really hard to cinch in that mini size, kind of like the Chanel 22 versus the Chanel 22 regular. Also, before I keep going, I'm not saying this is a brand new bag silhouette or trend. I mean, the drawstring bag is legit one of the oldest styles of bags ever invented by people, right? Like, you can find this style in museums, but this revival is quite spectacular. And I know I'm getting off track. So where was I? We first had the Chanel 22, then the Loewe Flamenco, and now the Bottega dust bag. And I'm sure there are others along the way, but these are the ones that stuck out to me, for better or for worse. Oh yeah, and the legit Balenciaga trash bag. I mean, laugh and mock all you want. They kind of had a point with that one. We are paying designer money for a designer trash bag. I guess what I'm trying to say is, how did I go from absolutely never even thinking I would toy around with the idea of spending designer money on a bag like this to now kind of being interested, just because I've bought into the narrative maybe that these are casual and low-key and fuss-free while still being luxurious, or whatever the heck luxurious is supposed to mean anymore. And while these are the three that started this journey for me, now we got Fendi's new soft baguette. That's like what you'd get if the baguette and the flamingo had a baby. And considering how I don't have a baguette and would love to add one someday, this now has jumped up on the rankings board for me as well. And the Roe Angie bag, which is relatively well priced compared to the Roe's other bags. Plus, you can find them for a pretty good deal pre-loved. But this is what you'd get if the flamenco and the old Bottega pouch had a baby. And even Dior is getting in on the action with their Millie bag, which is also like if the Chanel 22 22 and the Flamingo had a baby, but the Chanel had more dominant genes maybe because of the quilting and the chains. However, I don't know how I feel about that structured top handle though. Plus, I don't think you can actually cinch the bag shut, which is overall the main issue with any of these leather drawstring bags. Suffice to say, all of your major designer houses are getting in on that action. Todd has a drawstring bag. Miu Miu has their Joey drawstring bag, which of course means Prada has a drawstring bag, which by the way, at the beginning of the year, I don't think I've ever mentioned this. I got really close to buying this Miu Miu leather Napa pouch that was for around, I think, $1,200. And I had to stop myself because this was more like a bucket bag rather than a true trash bag. And I have enough bucket bags in my collection. But apparently I was still brainwashed into thinking $1,200 for a pouch wasn't a bad deal. So do you think this bag is worth designer money? I can't decide if there's anything super spectacular about how these bags are put together. Sure, I want quality leather and craftsmanship. That's what I'm willing to pay designer money for. But I'd be hard pressed to say that this design warrants designer money. And I can't say any of these bags have any designer elements that I find particularly impressive. It's a very simple bag style, especially from a construction standpoint. If anything, this is a bag that even I can sew, and I feel like even I can sew this in less than an hour. So to pay designer money for 2 flat pieces of leather sewn together with a drawstring, I don't know. I'm not 100% convinced. I'm torn, but I still find myself drawn to them. Plus, we now have so many mid-tier brands that are coming out with similar designs. And honestly, these non-designer mid-tier brands have been killing it with their leather quality and overall craftsmanship. Plus, all of the major houses are imitating each other anyway. So what's the difference here when a mid-tier brand gets in on the action, right? So what if they are duping some of these other brands that they're already duping each other anyway? So although I don't know if the trash bag is actually core to any of these brands, right? Or if it's a new style that they're just dabbling in because it's trendy. Like, I don't know if Chanel has released anything like the 22 previously, but I do know that the Loewe first released their Flamingo back in the 80s. I still think it's a little pretentious to say it's inspired by flamenco dancers, but again, who am I to say or have an opinion on how a designer gets inspired? I feel like I could have easily been inspired to design something similar looking at a Glad trash bag, but I just want to put that out there in case some of these brands are known for this style. And so maybe it's just their luck that it's their time to shine. And once again, they can ride this money train. But I have come across several interesting ones that are more affordable. Like Tory Burch has their Fleming Hobo bag that looks like a cross between the Loewe Squeeze and the Chanel 22. Songmont has their new Gather bag that's a lot like the Loewe Flamingo. Strathberry has their new Charlotte bag, and honestly, a lot of these just look like a cross between the Loewe Flamingo and the old, now kind of out of style Bottega dumpling pouch bag. So maybe those are about to make a second comeback. I don't know, but you can still find them for a dime a dozen on the pre-love market. Now, Coach also has a new Faye bag that's a lot like the new Fendi Soft Baguette. So let me know, when it comes to this style of a bag, are you willing to pay designer money, or are you willing to settle for some of these mid-tier brands that may or may not come off as quasi-dupes of these designer brands? It just feels like this style has really picked up steam, and I don't know how many of you are like me, where the more I'm seeing it, the more I'm okay with it. But at the same time, I think this bag is one of the forerunners to the start of the new effortless hobo look we have been all about these days, as we've gone from looking sophisticated and put together with our little structured, pristine condition bags and our little tweed Chanel jackets to a new type of quiet luxury, right? This look, this vibe is quiet in its own way, but it's a lot more chaotic, and it gives off that lazy, cool girl vibe, like I don't want to try too hard vibe. So it's still quiet in that sense, and it's now a statement to wear luxury as if it ain't no big thing, right? Like, we're really leaning into that everyday worn-in luxury look versus the buttoned-up, prim and proper look like you're about to go to high tea with the queen, which is interesting because it's just a different type of quiet luxury. It's the antithesis of looking put together. It's the flex of wearing a $10,000 hoodie versus a $10,000 Chanel tweed jacket. At least that's how it's coming across to me. It's somehow giving off, I have so much disposable income I can spare it on a designer trash bag vibe, don't you think? But at the same time, it begs the question, would you rather spend designer money on an everyday bag, or designer money on a special occasion only bag, on a bag that you don't feel like it's appropriate to wear every day versus something like this, which does feel a lot more appropriate. So let me know your thoughts on the designer trash bag. Would you go for it, if at all? Which do you already have? And do you like it more than like your prim and proper structured bags? Like, leave me a comment down below. I'd love to hear from you. And if you have any suggestions for me to check out, please leave those below as well. And finally, if you made it to the end, thank you for watching. And if you enjoyed the video, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And I'll see you next time.